Beautiful. Hopefully we're live. If someone wants to drop us a thumbs up in the chat that they can hear us and hopefully see us nice and clearly. We're going to kick off in just a few minutes. Hey, it looks like we've got some people in the chat who are already doing the old letting us know where they are today. So feel free to let us know where you're watching in from. Hey, got some thumbs up. That's awesome. Fire reacts in the chat. No, don't do that. We'll kick off in about 2 minutes. We've got, I think, nearly 200 registered, and we've got about 20 here, so I know that'll ramp up pretty quickly in the next 1 or so minutes. I can see a couple of names here that I actually recognize off first names. So we'll give it 1 more minute, and then we'll jump straight in. A quick webinar is a good webinar. I think everyone will agree.
Definitely.
Cool. Alrighty. About another 1 minute. We've got 20. No, we'll get some more than that. The people who are chatting in the chat, that's always good. Melbourne, yes, Melbourne represent. That's where both me and Gabby are. I'm in the inner west in West Footscray, and Gabby is in the inner north, aren't you?
I am, Brunswick East.
Too trendy for me, sorry. All right, let's move this one along. 10:02. That's how we want to start. Good morning or good evening, everyone. My name is Rich. I think a lot of people would recognize me and my face from around Sked Social, and I'm today joined by Gabby, who is our head of growth here at Sked, and we're going to talk about ideas and a bunch of other things that are kind of associated with that. So we're really excited to, I guess, give people probably their first in-depth walkthrough of some of the like concepts and things that are in Sked Ideas. And kind of we'll go from there. I like to keep these sessions like fairly light, really interactive, and you know, not take things too seriously. If you've got any questions as we go, drop them in the chat. One of the guys from the product team, Seb, is also here who answers stuff inline, and we'll highlight some questions as well that we'll call out kind of at the end of each section. So feel free to fire them away as they kind of arrive. Pop them in the chat, and then we'll kind of pick them up at the end of each section, and we'll do a Q&A at the end. Should probably bring up the first slide, and we'll get Gabby on screen as well. Yeah, this is kind of our first webinar, kind of Sked Expert session for 2026. And we're really going to focus on ideas on Sked and I guess how we arrived at this a little bit, and also how you can make the most of some of this new tooling that leans, you know, a little bit more into the AI space to build really interesting on-brand ideas from small pieces of inspiration or bringing in parts from other places into Sked to help you manage content creation workflows and pipelines and things like that. So yeah, why don't we kick off? We'll kind of start with a good old classic agenda, which we probably don't need. But I thought we'd kick us off today with a really, really light look back at how we've wrapped on 2025. I do want to focus on two things that were probably my favorite little additions towards the back end of last year. We'll then jump into ideas and talk about brand kit, setting up tone of voice, brand descriptions, all of that stuff, and how to kind of make the most of that and what they do in the process. AI create and in ideas, how do we generate ideas, what that little magic box does at scale. And then we'll kind of dip our toes a little bit into some of the things that you probably haven't seen in regards to how Sked can now connect to other platforms with some new Zapier integrations, including some stuff with ChatGPT and Claude. We'll talk about mobile. We've got a brand new mobile app arriving in the next couple of days, I'll say, and we'll give you a quick look at what to expect from that. And then we get into some of the fun stuff around like where we think we're going to see some of this stuff moving in the next like 2 to 3 months. We've got a pretty full pipeline from the product side, and we'll turn it over to everyone else for a bit of a Q&A. Let's kick this one off. Cool. Beautiful. We'll start out with a kind of a really quick look back on 2025. I'm just going to close Slack because it's all the way open. And close that. And kind of the key stuff I think we shipped across the back half of last year that probably some of my faves. We actually had a pretty stacked little pipeline on Q3 and Q4. And this is, I think, just some of the highlights. Gabby, do you have any of these which were your favorite? Because I have two of mine which are very boring.
I gotta say that the uplift to bulk create, which I know is further down, was definitely my favorite. But the Excel reports are also really, really nice, even though I use the dashboards fair bit on our team. I still found that just having that raw data and being able to export it in those nice pivot tables was great.
I do love a good pivot table. Certainly one of my ones that's up there is actually Google sign in. And I know that's incredibly boring, but being able to just one click in, even if you didn't register with a Google account when you did Sked or sign up the first time, or you signed up before it was introduced, just being able to click sign in and not having to worry, it'll handle the two-factor, which for me is on everything, is just a nice little time saver. Click a button and away you go. My other one is actually the paid versus organic insights. I think that was just a nice little kind of quality piece. I'll pick these up at the end if people want a little quick tour of them, and I'll go into some details about how they work, because incrementally you kind of got to see more and more small stuff like this pretty rapidly from us over the next 6 months as we kind of move on from ideas into some really new exciting things. The two that I do kind of want to focus on were, I always get this backwards. I was about to say internal notes and external comments. It's not. It's internal comments and external notes, which is part of approvals on Sked, or kind of tied to approvals, but you don't necessarily need to be using the approvals. No, you do. You need to be using approvals for it to work. What that means is inside all of your posts, what we've added in here inside the comments workflow is the ability to either message your team internally with an internal comment. It's not how you spell internal. And that would only be seen by you and your team within Sked, or you can toggle across to an external. And this would be seen by people internally as well as showing on the external review site. So we're now starting to get a much clearer delineation between things that you want to talk about with your team that perhaps you don't always want to have shown to a customer on external review. Sometimes it's nice to have private conversations, and making sure that those internal conversations are kept private, but enabling those external pieces on demand. And that's across a few different places on Sked with internal and external. So it's drafts, posts, and I think it's also coming to some other places we may talk about today too. The
Rich,
other one is what?
Sorry, pause real quick. Did you do a little demo there and we didn't see it?
Yes. Thanks, Gabby.
That's okay. I was like, I don't see you typing internal.
Classic rookie error.
We'll add it to this.
Yes. So on here on the right, you can toggle between internal comments and external notes. So you can make sure that those internal comms are kept just between you and your team, and anything you want to fire at the reviewer side, you can make sure is seen by them and your team. So we're making sure we've introduced those controls as well as some additional controls on how the approval links work. So do you want to hide external? Do you want to stop people from seeing any comments? All of those things have been adapted as well. So some nice little changes on that one. The other one, which Gabby mentioned, was bulk create. We did have an old bulk create tool. Let me just go and move across to this thing. And does that go? So we did have an old bulk create tool, which was kind of still sitting in the product for some legacy customers, but hadn't been updated in a number of years and didn't really do the things that we were wanting it to do, but we hadn't got around to changing it yet. We went and did a brand new version of bulk create that kind of lives within the existing create post workflow. We can do 20 posts at a time or 20 stories. It covers all of the existing account types that are supported on Sked. Previously, the bulk create version didn't cover things like Pinterest or Google My Business or some things that we'd added like recently, even though they weren't that new. It also introduced what we've called cluster post saving. So if you need to pick up a post later on and it's going out to a few platforms, those posts will stay together. So you can make changes to a series of posts really easily. If you need to make copy changes, they're all there in one go. And still allows for individual post customization and things like that. The last one, which is the never lose a post, this is more of a technical change, but if you now close Chrome or maybe Chrome crashes, anything that you're working on in bulk create or the single create post is saved just in your browser storage. And then when you reopen Sked, it will prompt you if you want to reload those. So you can't possibly lose a post without kind of intentionally discarding it, because sometimes these things happen, or you alt Q Chrome and you lose 20 posts worth of work. That's a particularly frustrating experience. So what this kind of looks like in practice is, got to undo the button clicks, is when you create a post, select your media, and you can either create a carousel using create post, or you can do bulk, which is, we'll open up the tabs on the left, and each one of these is a unique post. So we've also introduced a new save all button. So if you want to save all as drafts and pick them up or kind of map them out on the calendar, you can do that too. So it'll take a second to close. There we go. So that kind of bulk creates workflow. We've still got some additional changes coming up, but we're really trying to streamline how people do things at scale and making those processes really nice and smooth. Beautiful. Let's pull that one back out. Great. Let's bulk create. Cool. Let's get into, thank you, the ideas and brand kit. Sked Ideas has gone through a number of different kind of iterations and changes and names. And originally the concept for ideas on Sked probably kicked off about 3.5 or 4 years ago, because what we were kind of seeing was people weren't doing their planning on Sked. They were doing it in, weird and wonderful places. I'm going to pop a poll in here, which is, where do you do most of your social media planning and idea generation? Because I have a pretty good idea about what the answer is going to be on this one. When we ran this survey a couple of times over a few years, and overwhelmingly, people were doing it in places that weren't Sked. And the overall feedback was that they weren't doing it there because it was the best place to do it. And I can kind of see the one at the top that is kind of sitting towards the more popular side.
Yes, that's what I expected.
Yeah, this kind of came up fairly consistently in the number. I think the two surveys. So we had about 200 or 300 responses, and it was about 60%, 55%. We're doing kind of a lot of planning and stuff in Google Sheets, or if they weren't generating ideas there, they were certainly managing some of the content production with their team. And it wasn't that Google Sheets and Excel, etc., were the place that was the best place to do it. It was just that it was low friction, people understood it, it was usually free or low cost, and was a fairly straightforward way, even if you were paying a really high overhead on what we'll call like the cut and paste tax. So you're doing all your work in a sheet, and then you're just jumping into Sked and you're cutting and pasting everything into this create post form. Just for people who've selected somewhere else, please feel free to pop in the chat where that somewhere else is. I'm really keen to kind of understand the other tools that people are using, and how we might, eventually connect to some of those other tools as well. No one in the research kind of said, yeah, I'm doing it here because it's the best place. And what was really obvious was that we wanted to build more of a playground, experimental, freeform space on Sked, where it wasn't, you weren't creating posts, but maybe you're experimenting with ideas, or you're workshopping stuff, or you were kind of getting things in for early feedback, floating ideas, vibe checks, all of that kind of stuff, which is, we're not creating posts, but we're kind of, we want something that is going to give us more freedom in how we create stuff and then move it to the scheduling layer. And so that's kind of how we, worked through a few different iterations of this really early on. I think it went from a name of playground to workshop and then to something else. And in the end, we settled on ideas because it really generates ideas for you or assists you in idea generation. And helps you kind of overcome some of that like creative side or pull things out that you want to work on as a team. Let's pop open ideas, and we're going to start with kind of the brand kit side, because this is an integral part of how we've done. How do I hide the thingo? 47% in Google Sheets. That makes a lot of sense. Beautiful. I'll bring up the chat as well. Canva, yes. Word, SharePoint, AI. Yeah, we're going to talk about that one. Cool. Let's jump into the brand kit side, sorry, the ideas side. And I have got this 2 versions set up. I've got one, we're going to do the setup for the first time, just using a demo account, which is listed on Sked Social. And then I'll pull us into a more realistic product, a more specialized social media space that has some really good setup. So when we start with ideas, we build a brand kit. And the idea of brand kit is that we will establish your it's already bypassed the normally you do enter a URL at the start, then select your accounts, but I'd already had that entered earlier. When you build a brand kit, it will analyze the you enter in your domain, it will analyze your domain to build a tone of voice, and it will analyze your past content pillars and will suggest the content pillars that you're already using. So based on your past content, captions, and posts, so historical posts. We do some mapping across accounts. So we try and match up things that you've used on different platforms to not create duplicate content pillars. And it'll suggest between about 4 and 8, depending on the volume of posts. So we do try and apply some intelligence on how we kind of generate these content pillars. And you can see here for Sked, we've got behind the scenes, brand identity and values, community engagement, educational insights, trends, and product or service spotlights. They all look really, really good because I know what content we're publishing on LinkedIn. Looks pretty bang on. That's if I open up, does it sound right, Gabby?
Yeah.
You look at this stuff.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Crazy.
If we open up brand kit, you can see the things that it's generated for us. So we've got the brand description off the URL. I should have deleted this before we started, so it asked me for this and you could have seen it. That's my mistake. But it will generate a brand description, which is pulled from the website and synthesized into kind of who we are, what we do. It'll also pull out where you're located and any other kind of unique items that really make up some of your brand DNA in terms of, if you were to describe your business or organization in an elevator pitch, it should be fairly accurate. Gabby, is it accurate? I think it is.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Bang on.
Beautiful. We'll also do a tone of voice profile as well. It has generated this one here, which is the kind of the website tone of voice. And I've also got another one in here, which is from our own brand guide. And I'll show you how those have worked. When we go and synthesize it, it'll pop through and output some of the identity mission, persona and voice, how we're writing, M- usage, because we know that people don't want to sound like ChatGPT, and we want to replicate exactly, or at least as close as possible, to how people are writing, creating on their existing posts or their website or other media that they've supplied. And we use this to help guide multiple places in Sked on how things sound in terms of captions or ideas and things like that. You don't have to just analyze a website. You can also add in, say, blog URLs if you've got some specifically that sound certain ways. You can free paste your own text in here if you've got writing samples, or if you've got brand kits as well, you can upload those straight into a document. If you've got like a PDF, which is, that outlines how your brand looks and sounds, you can add that in there as well. And that was how we created this one, was just by our own existing brand tone of voice guide. So getting onboarded with tone of voice is really, really straightforward. Inside labels, it'll also have our content pillars that we've gone and done the auto detection on. You can edit them, you can create new ones, and we're also opening up labels to all customers. So you'll see this over the next week or so. If you haven't had labels accessed previously, you can create them using Brand Kit, and we're going to open up the editing and creating side for all customers in the next week or so. Cool. I will come back to the custom instructions and things like that because I think that's really interesting. Beautiful. Let's jump back into ideas, and I'll just switch across to another account that is probably a bit more realistic. Anyone who's met me before, they will know that I used to work at a coffee roaster many, many years ago, and I'm still connected to their accounts and still like to demo with their stuff because I think it's kind of interesting and people understand it a bit more intrinsically when it's something they can kind of grasp as opposed to just a Sked demo account. Quick kind of tour side. In here is what we've kind of called the scratch pad, and it's your inbox of ideas. So it's things that you have sent here from other places or you've generated them in Sked, and it's things that you are still deciding whether you want to do or not before bringing them across into the workspace, which is we'll call it like notionally accepted that an idea is a good one and you want to build it out. And inside here is all your kind of content pillar swim lanes, but you can also have people swim lanes or no swim lanes and just have a regular kind of, we'll call it a single column Kanban board for the time being. And down the bottom is where we have introduced some new ways to kind of do stuff on Sked with this little ideas box. And it's a kind of smart little box that does a fair bit of stuff, and there's certainly introduced some new things on Sked as a whole. So it will kind of move between different modes depending on what you've created and what you have entered. For example, if we just want to have like a quick idea about a new coffee, we can just pop that in there, and it's not how you spell quick. We can just pop that in there and it will go straight into your scratch pad for you to assess, keep working on, and then move it across to the workspace when you want to kind of start the real editing process. But we've also done a few little kind of clever things in here, which is if you're popping in longer titles, and here's one that I just cut and paste in the interest of time. Rumble do a cool little dog mug series, and it's always really popular. So we know we want to do a post at some point about the restock of the dog mugs. It's going to pop that in there, and it will give you a short title within the card. So if you paste in long amounts of text into this box or do a full paragraph, we'll give it a nice smart title so that you can kind of keep the workspace clear, and everything else will go and live in the topic and details of the card. So you don't lose the information. It just lives in here so you can kind of pick it up later. We've also introduced a kind of new UI interface for creating and editing stuff on Sked, which is the slide out. We wanted to try and move people away from completing a form with create post, and you kind of work top to bottom. So it offers you much more freedom in terms of the information that you want to put in. One of the things that was really important to us with ideas is that sometimes an idea might just have a title or a thought bubble, and it doesn't need to be a complete post, which means it doesn't need to meet minimum post requirements. One of the things with a regular post on Sked is it has to be publishable by the platforms you've selected. So if you do an Instagram post, it has to have an image. And if you do a Google My Business post, it has to have a topic. So we've kind of moved away from that, where ideas can be much more freeform. If you want to just throw some stuff in here as concepts, you certainly can. You don't need times and dates. You don't even need to specify platforms if you don't want to. It really gives you much more freedom to just throw some stuff idea, get feedback, see what you think, and then use the stuff that you want to use. We've also introduced a couple of extra components as well. Let's use the same one here for shortcut keys, because we want people to be able to move through this stuff really quickly. And some of those are using a / command to add in a particular content pillar. So we can add a content pillar, or we can also add an assignee as well if you're wanting to start to use ideas as a baby project management tool, and you'll kind of see some of the arc on where this is going. You can add those right at the start. Process that and pop this into there, and we can see that we've got this is a new releases thing where we go. So we can now start to build out content pipelines that have kind of content pillars, and you can see how much stuff you've got kind of coming up in the future. I'm just going to drag this into into the thing out of the workspace, and you can now start to work on it. So we can add in things like the dog mug graphic that I have on hand. We can add in the platforms that we want to use it on. Just a little note is if you have the platforms blank, it's technically all platforms, not none. It's you haven't narrowed the field down. It works a little bit differently. And you can also assign a date that you think you're going to publish it. I'll just pop it on here. This won't automatically assign a time or anything. It's just we want to start sketching out how things might look for the coming months or weeks. And you'll see how this kind of flows through to the calendar later. You can then work on things like expanding the topic and details, adding in your copywriting brief if you're working with other people who need to do stuff, adding in your draft caption, as well as some nice AI tools we'll get to in a sec, and also a creative brief if you need to hand this over to someone to go and take some photos or find some photos or edit some photos. So really starting to introduce some of these workflow steps that are definitely part of the creative process before, like well earlier into the kind of your Sked workflows. That's at its core kind of some of the quick and smart create options, but I think what we've really excelled at is some of the AI tools that we've built into this as well. Gabby, have you had much time to spend in the AI tools bit? Because there's a bit of depth in here.
I absolutely have for a couple of different ways. My first kind of plan is always, especially when it comes to the ideation with AI, is I have these pillars. I'm feeling a bit stuck on where to go. I give me some inspo, right? That's kind of where I always start from the conversation with AI, whether that was before ideas or with ideas. I've essentially moved my workflow over into ideas. But that's really where I was trying. It's like, hey, this is what Sked wants to talk about every week, every month. This is where where we're over indexing or where we're not. Give me something to kind of think about, like what's trending right now, what's going on in the world of social media. And that's where I start actually formulating some concepts and some ideas to then turn into eventual posts. I used to use Claude, ChatGPT at times as well, but we've actually been able to move that workflow entirely into Sked, which is really cool.
It seems like a good option for me to put the poll in the stream of preferred AI tooling. One of, I'm going to put start on that one. A quick little rewind. Back at the start of 2024, 2023, when did ChatGPT kind of start popping up? Started 2024, I want to say. Yeah.
And
that was
end of 23, early 24, I think.
Yeah, things moved quick.
Yes.
And we did when I was talking to customers at the start of the year, when I was in the customer success team, we're getting some feelers on like, hey, what do you think of ChatGPT? Because it was GPT-3 and then 3.5 that kind of came out in fairly rapid succession. And we did some, in our round of like that year's surveys, we kind of asked people, what do you think of this very broadly? Are you using it? What are you using it for? And the results were really mixed. It was like, from the kind of anecdotal feedback, it was people kind of saw it, but like, it doesn't really do anything that, like, it's not meeting the level of polish that I'm really looking for, or it's kind of very, very same. And I think people also a little bit hesitant on really dipping their toes into it for a number of reasons. They just weren't sure. And then we ran the same survey back 6 months later. So it was January to July, give or take. And there was no one in the second survey who said they weren't using some kind of AI tooling at all. It went from kind of about half of people to nobody said they weren't using it, which is really astounding for something that was just 6 months. And this is still very, very early on in the process. And we kind of continued to see more and more people adopt it. And a lot of people start their processes of ideation and kicking off and suggestions in things like ChatGPT. And I'm surprised that Gemini's a 0. Anyway, in ChatGPT and not Gemini, Claude, something else, etc. So we're certainly seeing, not even a trend. Like, we know that's where people start.
I I would be so
And
curious from the chat, actually. Sorry for jumping in, Rich, but um, what are you using? How are you prompting ChatGPT? How are you prompting Claude? How are you prompting any of the AI tools? I think that that's also evolved quite a lot from the beginning and till now. And what is the, is it to get ideas? Is it to build the scripts? Is it to do the caption posts? I think there's so many applications to it now, and it's definitely been, I mean, yes, like I wasn't using it. I was a bit hesitant, and now it's part of everyday life, right? For many different use cases. If you feel inclined, I would love to hear how you're using the chat, whether that's ChatGPT, Claude, or anything else.
yeah, I'd love for some feedback on it. Are you building, have you built custom gems that maybe if you're an agency is doing some of the, heavy lifting based on content pillars and tone of voice and that kind of stuff, and the level of complexity you're kind of leaning into? Have you set up OpenClaw on your desktop and it's doing all sorts of heavy lifting, or perhaps just in Claude Cowork? I say just, but that's a very fancy tool. Because what we wanted to do with, I guess, Sked Ideas is tap into some of that power and also offer some new integrations as well that we'll talk about, and how we kind of interface with these tools that we know people are using. Let's get back into the stream thing. I'm going to leave that. Can I stop that one? Surprising amount of ChatGPT. No, actually, that makes perfect sense. That's not even a surprise. It's just so everyone's first kind of toe in the water, and it's a fantastic product. Cool. Yep. In this little box, we can switch this over to what we call AI Create, or an AI mode. And this itself is built on Gemini, and it does a lot of fancy things. I reckon we can start at the bottom, and we're going to go generate me 5 ideas for posts for key upcoming cultural events or days in my city or country. Now, it knows where this account is located, which is Melbourne and within Australia. And let's kind of just see what it spits out. So we can start not just asking it for specific things, but we can ask it for more broad and contextual stuff. So,
I think that's the key. It's the context, right? Because you can ask for, just give me 5 things around coffee, but hyper specific to your city or your, even more if you're a community based organization or business, it's going to come really, really in handy.
Yeah, exactly. So Rumble, a coffee roaster here in the inner west of Melbourne, who I used to work for, their big thing is like transparency. They're a B Corp, really about ethical sourcing, and kind of talking about some of the issues that plague the industry in terms of purchasing, producers not getting paid enough, all of those kind of things. It's really part of their brand DNA. I'll just hit accept all on these and I'll pop these open. So I've now got my 5 suggestions here, and I've got the Grand Prix. Yes, that is definitely this weekend in Melbourne. We've got the date of Sunday the 15th. It's actually the wrong date. I'll move that forward because it is on the Sunday the 8th. And it'll give you the kind of concept, the overview. So what you can talk about in the post. It's not going to be too specific because we think it should offer you some inspiration with a lot of leeway to add your own kind of creativity into stuff. It's not going to give you a step-by-step unless you ask for it. Copywriting, it's going to give you a draft caption. Engines are running at Albert Park. Yeah, I mean, they're not that loud these days. I can't even hear them from my house. But it is kind of, we're now starting to get to on-brand stuff that's kind of interesting. You can also generate creative briefs or copy briefs on how to, write for these things. Or if you want to regenerate it, you can also regen and refine aspects as well within these posts. Let's go and pull out one of the other ones. Autumn equinox, yes, March 20. I'm not going to open that one. Earth Day, transparency is non-negotiable. Hey, Earth Day is at the end of April, isn't it?
It is, yes. And I was going to say, what's really good about what you just did is that you created 5 different posts across cultural moments and stuff, but they also balance. It's also quite balanced across all of the pillars. They didn't the AI didn't over-index to one thing over the other. So you get to, it aligns with again, going back to that context, that it's really trying to align and make sure that your content plan is as balanced as possible, which is always really important for social media managers, as we know.
Definitely. One of the things it does is if you just ask it for stuff in general, it will balance out your request across content pillars. Or if you add a specific content pillar in here, it will narrow the generation to within only that content pillar. So if we kind of do it behind the scenes and it's like, generate me some ideas for, something we can shoot here, it will only generate stuff within those content pillars. So you can have it to be fairly broad or fairly narrow in the terms of context that you want it to write for. You can also ask it for stuff outside of your content pillars if you wanted to, but you do have to ask it. So there are a few levels and layers to the thing that aren't necessarily obvious when you kind of open it for the first time, click the tab across and do it. It also does a few more fancy things. So one of the ones is if you include links and URLs in the post. So if I've got a thing here, I'm going to say, hey, write me a LinkedIn thought leadership style post for this blog, which is from Combank, focusing on why is coffee getting more expensive. And it will know that we're taking LinkedIn as the platform we want to use. It will do it in kind of a bit more of a LinkedIn, not quite broetry LinkedIn style, but like a thought leader style extended caption. And it will also grab the contents of the link as well and make sure that they're included in the post. So let's see what it does. Maybe I'll just bring this up as a quick. I'll bring the link up, just even though it's not very interesting. Is that one on screen, Gabby?
Yes, you got it.
Why is your coffee getting more expensive? Basically, weather related, more wages and operating costs, competition, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the general crux of it. And then let's go back into the thingo. The real cost of your morning flat white. Let's pop this open and take a look. Topic, yep, thought leadership style addressing the rising cost of coffee. And if we pop open the copywriting, I'm just going to make this one, move it to the workspace so I can make it bigger. Beautiful. Flat white isn't expensive. It's a reflection on the global industry under immense pressure. And we're talking about the specifics that were in the thingo, basically profit margins, how much stuff costs, and read the full breakdown, et cetera, et cetera. So it really is focusing on Rumble's angle of transparency, and they publish what they pay for coffees, that they pay more because the people who are producing it need to make money, otherwise they're not going to exist, and that cheap coffee isn't necessarily good coffee. So it's taken all of this stuff from the brand kit and the tone of voice and the URL to write kind of some of this like LinkedIn stuff. And then when we're ready, we can bring in the media for it, which is this one here that I have prepared earlier. And we're kind of now like getting into a post. So you can kind of see where some of this stuff is going. One of the last ones is, we know that this is certainly not all of the things that this box does, is we know people are kind of, starting in ChatGPT, or they're starting in Google Sheets, or they're starting in a few different places. And maybe you just want, you're paying a really high cut and paste tax of like, I've got to paste this stuff into forms and things and fill out a form for every post. And we think it's a pretty bad way of doing it. And so you can just paste in your outputs from ChatGPT, wholesale, copy the entire prompt and hit go. And it will map and parse the contents of this into individual posts or individual ideas. So it will pull your topic in details, it will pull your draft captions, it will pull hashtags. It will build out from bulk text, and you could just cut and paste from your Google Sheet if you want to. It's got the same things in here because I used the same generation piece. And it will map the dates. We've got the Flower and Garden Show. Moomba is on, I think it is on this weekend. We've got Food and Wine Festival. So these were things that I generated in Claude, and I'll show you where they came from. And it will now just map these into individual ideas. I think we've got the copy in there as well. So we've now shortcutted out a lot of this cut and paste thing, which I don't think anyone thinks is a good use of time. And if you've generated ideas in custom GPTs and, hey, I just want to put these into Sked because I need to continue working on them, like adding in media, getting feedback, like floating with a team, getting someone to maybe do a copy pass, you can do all those things directly in here. I think it's a massive time saver, and it was kind of the first little AI piece that we started building for this, and we realized that we could kind of move it on from there pretty significantly from just enabling other AI tools. So if anyone who is building stuff inside GPT, you can just paste it directly into ideas in the AI mode and hit go. Hey, it's a question from Blanco, who I will actually just reply directly out of here. It's running on Gemini 3 Flash with some custom tooling. Beautiful. One of the other ones I will just cross off really quickly as part of this is how we can do what we'll call evergreen content generation. And I think this is somewhere where we'll try and introduce some new user interface components to make it more obvious that things can be used for this. But for example, I'm going to pin this one into my ideas board so it doesn't disappear. And then if I want to create variations of this later on, I can go and create a post. So we've got all the copy and stuff in here. It's just linked in. And then give me 3 variations of this for me to finish the post. And this is also how we convert ideas to posts as well. So we'll do this. We'll create the 3. And it should give us 3 variations of this that we can maybe schedule out over a few months. I did accounts LinkedIn. There we go. Where are we? Beautiful. Just select that one. Because there's not a LinkedIn account connected for that group. That was my error in my thing there. So this is the original one, which is $7 flat white, not expensive. And then we've got a second variation in here as well, which is it's just written differently. It's kind of slightly different angle on it. This is all generated from within ideas. And this is actually very, very on brand for them. And then we've got a third one as well, which is transparency isn't just a buzzword at Rumble. So if you have consistent things that you are evergreen content and you have them mapped out and sketched in ideas, you can pin them there, you can generate variations of them, you can reuse them, you can add in new media. All of those things are enabled within ideas to kind of pull things out that maybe have worked in the past. And we're going to talk about some of those things later on about how we want to introduce some things around bringing in past performing content as well. And we're ready. I'm just going to save all of these as a draft. We'll bring across the time and date as well by default. So if you've added in a default date into something, it will bring that across onto those days when you go and finish. So you can just schedule it straight away. I'm just going to go and hit save. That's kind of at its core a lot of the idea creation workflow. But we've also introduced ways that this is going to work on the calendar as well. So Gabby, how do you tackle, this is something that I know came up really early on, which was how do we kind of bridge the gap between things that you're thinking about doing and things that you have scheduled and kind of interfacing with both of those layers? Because it is a challenge, right? I'm sure that people in the chat will be like, yeah, I've got my things on my calendar, but how do I then turn other things into a to-do or show things that I'm thinking about in the places that I want to see it?
Absolutely. I do think that that's definitely one of the challenges that we, one that we had in marketing even before ideas, right? And just something that we were very mindful of when ideas came about, because you just want to make sure that you're, more than anything, we have a couple of core channels. We want to make sure that we're posting 3 to 4 times a week, every single week. But we also found ourselves, what was happening is actually even doubling up or tripling up on days and then days going blank. So there was a lack of balance in the content scheduling. And then there was huge content gaps, right? So we were really over indexing on our Q&As, which have been great, but then we're not kind of supplementing it with other things that we knew that we wanted to incorporate and were part of the larger strategy. So leveraging the calendar and being able to actually visualize. First and foremost, we visualize currently the Sked team uses the Ideas workspace to balance out from a content pillar perspective. So we first and foremost do that. We look at, okay, we have 3 cards We work in about 2 to 3 week sprints, and we're each assigned a 2 posts that we need to do each. We're a really small team. We don't have a dedicated social media manager, as many of you probably also experience. So we want to make sure that we're spreading this out, and then we're all using all of the spaces the way that needed to. So we first do that. We balance it out from the workspace, make sure that they all have roughly the amount of mix that we were hoping for. And with then the dates placed, we then can look at the calendar and say, okay, now this is how this is being laid out visually for the next coming weeks. So it's actually been a game changer in how we've been able to connect both and use both.
Yeah, let's pop it over. So we've introduced a way that your ideas that are sitting in both your Scratchpad and your workspace, if they have a date on them, they will appear on your calendar as a little, we're going to fix that up, as a little thing here saying you've got an idea on this day, which helps you understand that you've already got things planned. Maybe you've kind of had someone approve it, but you're waiting on someone to actually write it or shoot video or finish some creative, but you know something's planned on this day. We've also done it backwards. So if you have things that are like locked in from campaigns and you need to fill in stuff with other content, you can just go to the day. I'll just go into the 21st here, add an idea, and it's like the new filter coffee launch for April. And you choose which group it belongs to because ideas are part of groups. And I will just go. We can create the idea. It will show on your calendar, and then it will also appear in your ideas inbox for that thing as a kind of to-do item. So we're really trying to bridge the gap between things that you know that you're going to do or intend to do, but aren't finished. And we're trying to remove that kind of placeholder requirement of dragging in things that, you know, might have placeholder media. And at the same time, put it somewhere where you know you have to go do it. It's like, pop it on your thing. I need to go do this. And you'll see some of the stuff that's coming up that introduces more workflows for people to move through creative steps and layers. This came up really early in the research, and it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me on that call, where the challenge of like being able to look at gaps in content and go, I just need to pop something in here. I need to pop something in here and have that flow through to a to-do list was, like I said, a light bulb moment. And we knew that it was something that we wanted to do because it really crosses over those two things that have been traditionally hard to map together and understand what things might look like. That's kind of the end of ideas, but I'm going to just open up the Q&A and see if anybody has any questions about this, how it works, kind of what the AI tooling does, how it works, because I can't answer that, and anything else before we're going to kind of, we'll get into integrations and mobile, which are going to take about 5 minutes, because I know no one wants to sit in here for an hour, and then we'll pop it over to a Q&A. But pop your questions in there. I'll talk about the integrations first. Share this out instead. So as clearly exhibited in the poll before, people are using ChatGPT and Claude and other places to do this content, writing, idea generation, all of that kind of stuff. We've introduced the new Zapier connector, so you can import things directly into Sked Ideas using Zapier, so it'll live in the Scratchpad. So if you're using a Google Sheet, when something meets a certain status, or maybe you tick a box, you know, you write yes in terms of send to Sked in a spreadsheet, it will bring the topic and details directly into the Scratchpad via Zapier. That also opens up some interesting stuff where it's like, hey, you know, I'm just going to repeat this one. Generate 5 social media post ideas for across my content pillars for upcoming cultural, I should have cut and pasted in here, events in Melbourne. Pop that one through. I've already set this up as like a custom GPT equivalent inside Claude. So it's got the brand voice, it's got the content pillars, all of that stuff. And once it's finished, and it's got a good content pillar there for producer partnerships. That's good. Remember, hey, Gemini's come up on Sked with the same things that hey, Melbourne International Coffee Expo. There we go, behind the scenes education. Great. I think those are all pretty good ideas. And we will just make sure the connector's on. Use Zapier to send these ideas to Sked Ideas in the Rumble board.
That's pretty cool.
And it will just shoot those across into the inbox. So yeah, cool, we know. That's weird, it was enabled yesterday. Cool, okay, well, that's embarrassing because that worked yesterday when I did my demo. It might have been that Claude outage, it's reset the connectors. You can set up the custom MCP servers inside ChatGPT and Claude to send this stuff directly into Sked Ideas without any cutting and pasting. It will just take the topic and details, and there's something that we just need to wrap up before this kind of goes out to everybody. But if you're interested, pop me a message and I'll give you some instructions on how to get it set up once we finish that last little piece of the Zapier integration. But directly connecting Claude and ChatGPT to Sked is certainly possible. And there's some additional layers we can handle with media going directly to your library and things like that. So we're certainly looking at how do we introduce Sked into other platforms and workflows that people are using, whether those are spreadsheets or AI tooling or a combination of both, and how do we let people move between these layers with minimal kind of cut and paste tax is a polite way of saying it. Go back to here. Yeah, it's annoying that thing didn't connect. The last one as well, I really want to talk about is mobile. Gabby, what's the number one thing that people request on mobile?
Oh, do you know what? That you should have asked me that because I actually don't. Well, I think it's two things. I think it's, is it inbox and being able to respond to things? Okay, that's what I thought. I felt stumped for a sec. But yes, being able to comment, respond to DMs, things like that would be, I think, the biggest one. And yes, okay, good. It is.
It's definitely inbox. This should be out in the next week or so. I don't think it's going to take any longer, but we have been cramming a few extra little pieces in there that we just wanted to finish. Mobile's been completely rebuilt. The old version was perhaps not, not fit for its purpose in 2026 and didn't focus on all the new tooling that we had. Number one is fully unified inbox on mobile for all of your social platforms, and they'll just come through to Sked. It's also got an ideas integration, so you will be able to send things or you can add ideas directly from your device into Sked Ideas. And we're also introducing some stuff where you can share from other applications into Sked Ideas directly. So if you're in Instagram or TikTok and you see something cool, you can bring that across and add it to an ideas workflow. So you don't no longer trying to store stuff or screenshots. And I will pop the poll in here because I just remembered it, is where do you store your ideas you find scrolling? And I think my favorite response is the last one, which is, I'm going to store these. I'm just going to shoot these into the ether, and I swear I will look at them again, but it's a lie and you will never get around to looking at this thing. If you're organized, maybe it's going in the Notes app or going to a shared document. But I think most people kind of sit somewhere between a WhatsApp group chat, which then gets buried, and that's also the ether, or you're probably kidding yourself and it's like, I'm never going to get around to this again. I will save this and it's going into my stored things and I will never, ever, ever see this again. Just a bit tongue in cheek from me because I know the problems.
Mine are everywhere. I have my chat to myself on Slack is very, very active, by the way. Lots of voice notes to myself on ideas that I've seen or threads of thoughts that I have that should be ideas. And then I'm sure the marketing team is sick of me DMing them after work hours with ideas. And I'm like, we should do this. We should do this. We should do this. And then it never surfaces again. So it's definitely dead in the group chat.
Look, it's a little bit hard to see because the way the screen's recorded, but hopefully you can see it. But this is just a quick shot of the unified inbox. All of your social platforms will be in there. We've got on-device AI replies using Apple Intelligence or the equivalent Google Gemini one. So it's local on your device. We've also introduced some brand new kind of views on how you edit posts. So we've brought in, it's far simpler. It's a much nicer UI to handle things like approvals, changing statuses, and all of the things that are kind of associated with those workflows. Seb, who looked after this one, has done a fantastic job. It looks super clean and neat and modern. And native library management, so you can just add things into your Sked library from your device, which is a really significant time saver because it'll handle some of the transcoding and stuff on your device. Just pop it in there, shoot it across. And you can also create posts directly from your library too. And what's this one? This is the ideas. So yeah, your scratch pad, so you can see the stuff that you brought across. You can add new ideas to it from other sources. So being able to shoot it across from platforms using the native kind of share function. You go share to Sked Ideas, and it will land in your scratch pad ready to go, and you can pick that up later on. And last but not least, at the same time, you'll also see a brand new lot of notification stuff on Sked as well. Not just for mobile, also for desktop and email, with some new social listening notifications focusing on keywords, new keyword trends, comments with negative sentiment, new ones for approvals. So if you're using Sked for approvals, when someone says no to something on the approvals link, you can then get a notification, either email, mobile if you want it, or desktop, as well as new teamwork alerts across ideas, posts, and post-published kind of options too. So all of that stuff you'll see at the same time as mobile, and will probably be in the next 4 to 5 days. So there's a fair bit coming out in the immediate kind of future. Where we're going to take this in terms of ideas, I think you're probably going to see some stuff around. Let's go pull that one back, and we'll add this one back in, and we'll pop this one open. This is kind of some of the things where we think that we're going to move this to. One of those is perhaps we introduce some, more Kanban style systems which open up content creation workflows in ideas. This is just a mock-up, it's not functional. Can we bring in some trends, and could you add ideas into the scratch pad from other places in Sked? So could you have a conversation in your inbox and you send that conversation as something maybe you want to create a post about, or inside competitors and you see someone who, maybe they're not a competitor, maybe they're just someone who does a really good job, and you want to introduce those things into your own kind of ideas workflow. So past posts, things that worked really well a few months ago, can we show you those and allow you to bring those back into something you want to reintroduce or do new takes on? Those kind of things is front of mind for us, as well as some new views on the calendar, and really just streamlining some of how Sked works and feels, making it a bit slicker, I think is a great way to describe it. That's it from me. I've done tons of talking and I'm actually over time, but poll, yeah, 40% straight into the ether. Yeah, I admire everyone's honesty. Anyone's got any questions, please feel free, bang them in the chat. I'll answer them to the best of our ability, because we've spent a lot of time building this. There is a bit of complexity in ideas, and really love for people to kind of dip their toes into it and see what they think. Hours of screen recordings in my phone. Yes. Yes, I am familiar with that one. Question from Kathleen. Will we get notified when the new app is live? Yes, you definitely will. We'll send you an email and we'll probably send you a notification. And if you've got auto updates on your device enabled, you should just get upgraded automatically. So the only thing holding up that now is just some notification stuff, which should be finished in the next couple of days. So it is ready to go. Send it to myself. Yeah, that's the ideas thing. You send it to yourself and then you just bury your stuff in. You bury yourself and you never find it again.
Yes.
Where we get recording is a transcript. Yeah, you can get the recording afterwards. And if you have any questions, feel free to fire them at me. I think my email's in the thing, or if not, I'm sure it's just reach out. Got any questions, particularly on how ideas works, or what you would like to see and other places that you still kind of lean on other tooling? yeah, shoot it across, because you're going to see a lot of stuff from us over the next kind of 3 or 4 months pretty rapidly that wasn't explained here or wasn't mentioned. So I think all of these things and some of the biggest components were all direct customer feedback and kind of how we solve for particular customer workflows that we know are kind of friction points. Anything stand out for you, Gabby? Do you have any questions for me?
I think you did a great job covering it all, but no, this was great. I'm really excited for notifications and mobile to come out as well. I think just even be able to no idea will be lost anymore, which is really exciting.
Definitely. Yeah. Beautiful.
All
Hey,
right.
11:01. We ran slightly over, and I did do lots of talking. Thanks everyone for joining. I always love hosting a webinar, and it's great to kind of get this out in the wild. If you have any questions, feel free to pop a chat to the support team, or if you have any real detailed questions and ideas or kind of where you'd like to see stuff, you're always welcome to pop me a message as well. Just reach out at skedsocial.com. Happy to talk.
We'll send through the chat and the recording and the transcript so everyone has it in their inbox as well. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.